is up, everybody? We are back with another Halo Book Club video. That's right, we're doing a book club now because I am listening to the Halo audiobooks. I started doing that when Halo Flashpoint was announced and I started working on all the training things. I was like, I really got the Halo bug, so I wanted to listen to all the audiobooks. This isn't the first time I listened to them, but it is the most recent time. Why do a book club? I have recently finished book 31 of the Halo series, which was Divine Wind. I just thought it'd be cool to share my thoughts and maybe get some of your thoughts on the books if you've listened to them. And maybe this might encourage you to get into the books yourself. I also thought it might be helpful for the Flashpoint players that are just getting into the Halo lore, because maybe you just really like the board game and you haven't learned too much about the Halo lore. This could be a good way to catch up on some of it. The rules! So I am listening to the audiobooks, like I said, so that will factor into some of my opinions. I'll try to mostly just give rundowns of the books instead of full spoilers. So I'll just go through the story beats, but just beware, there will be spoilers in there. I'll try to do these as fast as I can. I don't want to ramble on too long. I'm not an English major or anything like that. And I will do them in the order that I listened to the books in. These are all my opinions, and they may differ from yours. You know, that happens. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is what I thought about the book. And if you thought something different, let me know in a comment. What are we covering today? Today is The Fall of Reach. This is the first Halo book, and also the one I listened to longest ago, because I am on book 31 now. This is book 1, so there's been 30 books since Fall of Reach. Thankfully, I've listened to this book many times, and I've read it many times, so I've got a pretty good understanding of the book. I was thinking maybe it's a good thing that I have listened to some of these books a long time ago. The elements and the characters and the plot points that I remember the freshest in my mind are obviously going to be the things that I gravitated to the most when I listened to them. And so if I can recount them to you, then they were the things that were most important to me. And that's just a good indicator. So book 1, Halo Fall of Reach, was first published October 31st, 2001, which is actually 1 month before the first game came out. It was written by Eric Nyland. This has been reprinted multiple times, and there was kind of updated version that came out in 2010, which has a few extra tidbits included. It has also been adapted into a comic book series, as well as an animation, all with the same name, Fall of Reach. This is one of the most important books lore-wise, and a lot of people's favorite. It goes into Master Chief's origins / the early training of the Spartan 2s. It sets up the backdrop for the Human Covenant War. The book's set over a pretty large time period, the earliest being 2517, which is 35 years before Halo 1, and the book ends just before the events of Halo 1, around September 19, 2552. So, the main characters of the book, as far as I see them, would be Master Chief John 117, Captain Jacob Keyes, and Catherine Halsey. There's certainly other characters in the book, but these are, I would say, the main focus of the book. So, Master Chief John 117. So John begins the book as a young but exceptional child in the year 2517. He meets a young woman who we later find out is Halsey, and is promptly kidnapped / recruited as a 6-year-old child for the Spartan 2 program. Being an exceptional child, as Halsey predicted, he took this in stride and he excelled in the Spartan program. Through the training, we are introduced to some of his fellow Spartans, notably Kelly and Samuel. So Fred and Linda weren't as important at this time. John eventually goes through the augmentation process to become a Spartan 2 and survives, but many of his fellow Spartan 2s do not survive, and that has a big impact on Chief and the program as a whole. We go through some of his initial missions as a Spartan, mainly one mission where he kidnaps a prominent rebel leader, and, you know, he kills quite a few people, and he doesn't really care too much about it. Not long after, the Covenant are revealed to John, and he promptly receives his first suit of Mjolnir armor, but along the way, he loses his close Spartan friend, Samuel, which has a big effect on Chief. Then there is a large time skip, mainly to July 2552. The Covenant are attacking a planet called Sigma Octis 4, and have found some sort of Forerunner rock. Chief goes into the city and captures it, which we later find out will lead him to Alpha Halo. Not long after, Chief goes back to Reach and is introduced to Cortana and is given his latest suit of Mjolnir, which is the suit he has in Halo 1, which now has shields and has smart AI integration. Chief and the other Spartans are giving up for a risky operation, but the Covenant attack Reach, ending their plans. We then have Jacob Key as the second main character as far as I see it. He begins the book as an escort for Catherine Horsley, going to survey children as he understands it, which is unknowingly the beginning stages of the Spartan 2 program, as Horsley goes around and takes field reports on some of the children. After that, he is absent for a large part of the book during Chief's training section, but we learn he grew suspicious of Horsley and was reassigned elsewhere in the UNSC. We catch up with Keyes in 2552 during the same battle as Chief on Sigma Octanus. Keyes is in command of a lone UNSC destroyer called the Iroquois, and he pulls off a daring maneuver, later known as the Keyes Loop, where he incapacitates/destroys 3 Covenant ships single-handedly. He is promoted to captain soon after and serves in several more space battles. He eventually is chosen to command the Pillar of Autumn in conjunction with Chief's risky mission, but when Reach is attacked, the mission is scrapped and all hands are on deck to defend Reach. Keyes displays his brilliance again during the initial skirmishes of the Reach battle, but with overwhelming numbers, the Pillar of Autumn is forced to flee, managing only to bring Chief alive, because turns out Linda is also in the Pillar of Autumn, but she is clinically dead at the time. And they flee into unknown space, eventually to find some sort of mysterious ring-like structure. Dr. Catherine Horsley, I would say, would be the third main character of the book. Horsley begins the book having received authorization from the shady Oni organization to survey children for potential super soldier program, designed to combat key rebel forces threatening to tear the United Earth government apart. Through the book, she commits many morally grey to outright dastardly acts, all in the name of protecting humanity and science/knowledge. She views herself as a sort of mother figure to the Spartan 2s, and she pretty much protects them to the best of her abilities, which is usually giving them as much support as she can. And John is pretty much her favorite Spartan 2. She loves all of them, but John is certainly the favorite, being, what she views as the pinnacle of the Spartan program. She puts her child recruits through a series of risky to outright dangerous medical procedures to enhance them, but eventually loses almost half of her Spartan 2s. I guess through that program, that eventually gave the UNSC the knowledge to make the Spartan 3s, and then make the Spartan 4s. So, morally ambiguous, as I said. She receives no authorization for a second class of Spartans, but goes on to develop Mjolnir armor, as well as many other general sciencey things. She is pretty much just the UNSC's go-to science lady. She ends the book on the ground at Reach, with Covenant attacking, and her status unknown. Other notable characters through the book, we are introduced to Chief Franklin Mendez. If Horsley was the mother, Mendez was the father, and more literally the head trainer for the Spartan 2s. He navigates the moral ambiguity of his role the best he can, and he guides Chief when able, with some of Chief's moral dilemmas. Samuel 034 is a close friend to John during his early training, and he dies, which has a big impact on Chief. I'll just group all the other Spartan 2s together, because many of them don't really have too much impact on the story as a whole, but they're all notable characters, and many go on to have their own separate stories. The main one would be Linda, who ends the book with Chief, but was wounded and put in cryosleep on the Pillar of Autumn. The status of most of the other Spartan 2s are unknown at this time, but they all basically end up on the ground on Reach, missing or killed. Cortana is another notable character, but she only really appears pretty close to the end of the book, so she doesn't have too much of an impact. Her main thing is just the thing she does in game, where she's given the Chief to be his onboard AI, and to be the mission specialist for his upcoming risky mission. We are briefly introduced to Sergeant Avery Johnson. He is in just about one chapter, and he's mostly just a generic Marine. There's no specific relationship between Chief and Johnson at this time. Finally, we are introduced to Colonel James Ackerson. He isn't really featured that much, but he is the primary naysayer against the Spartan program, and he is a Horsley hater, so he doesn't much like Horsley, and he'll be a bit important later. My favorite things about the Fall of Reach book. This book is probably the best depiction of Halo space combat out of all the books and media to date. It is one of my most favorite facets of the Halo lore, would be the space combat and the spaceships, and it is often ignored and hasn't really been explored as much as I'd like. It's cool to see John's early training, and I feel like it's described well and it kind of makes sense, which is cool. I do enjoy that the book does show John in a more dynamic light, as he isn't necessarily a good guy. He does things morally questionable at times and shows very little remorse for it after. A specific chapter, soon after John has received his augmentations, has John placed in a dangerous situation with a group of much older ODST special forces, where it's kind of set up that this might be a training like a training mission for Chief, organized by Mendez and Horsley. Chief ends up fighting the squad of soldiers, and he does kill / severely wound many or pretty much all of them. I think kind of write this off as, he's just a kid, he didn't know what he was doing, he didn't know his speed, but Chief made the decision to go for these critical hits. He made the decision to hit these fellow soldiers in the head, in the neck, break people's arms. Like, he did all that. He didn't need to. He could have been a much less lethal than he was. And after talking to Mendez, he pretty much just forgets about the whole thing and just moves on and just doesn't really care about it. And I think that's an interesting view of Chief, that he might not necessarily be the good guy. He's just a necessary guy. Like, he sacrifices a lot, and he has doubtlessly saved humanity many times, but that doesn't make him a good guy. And I feel like 343 / Microsoft, whatever, have kind of really tried to push the Chief's just a good guy. He's just like a superhero type of man. I think it's more interesting to think of him in a bit more realistic way. The things I don't like about the book. So I do feel like the book pretty early on does sexualize Horsley in a bit of a juvenile way, where it talks about, she has to be naked and, she's got all these curves and things. And I just feel like in this day and age, it does feel a bit juvenile, and it makes the book feel pretty like generic sci-fi, because that's just a sci-fi book trope, just a overt sexualization of any woman character. I guess another thing I don't really like too much about the book is that it has mostly had a lot of retcons throughout the years. As you listen to it, it's a bit hard to reconcile it all together, because in the book, they basically say the Chiefs never really met an elite until the Battle of Reach. They don't know about brutes. They don't know about, he meets his first hunter, and all that has pretty much just been retconned at this point. The initial Battle of Reach, how it's described in the book, has pretty much completely changed. Pillar of Autumn being on the ground isn't mentioned at all in the book, which is obviously something that was introduced in Halo Reach, the video game. And that's just a few of the discrepancies. So it's a bit hard to keep track of all that when you listen to the book and kind of make sense of it. My final thoughts. There was a time I would have said The Fall of Reach was my penultimate favorite book out of all of them. But with so much selection we have available now, I really would probably bump Fall of Reach a few places down. Hard to say which book I'd put above it, but I think just because it has been retconned so much, it's a bit hard to continue to put it on top. I still think it is a pretty much essential read, if for nothing else than having a good look at Chief's backstory. But this is explored a bit more in some of the other books that we'll get to in the future. This is the order I listen to the books. This isn't the official order as put out by 343 / Microsoft. This is my personal order, and it sometimes goes by release date, sometimes this goes by personal whim. This might split up trilogies and it might not, but basically, if you want to follow along, listen to them in whatever order you want, but this is the order that I have listened to them. And we have finished Book 1, Fall of Reach. Thanks for listening. I hope you followed along pretty well. I hope, if nothing else, that this kind of pushes you to listen to the books yourself. If you've got any feedback on what I've said, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.